The playoffs are here, and you can predict the action all the way to the finals with FanDuel Predicts. Predict the spread, the total points, and even the game-winning moments that make the playoffs. Sign up and get a $25 bonus with FanDuel Predicts.
Offered by FanDuel Prediction Markets, LLC, a registered futures commission merchant. 18-plus bonus is non-withdrawable and expires 7 days after receipt. Trading derivatives involves significant risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Manage your activity with their consumer protection tools. Restrictions apply. See terms at FanDuel.com/predicts/bonus-offer-terms.
Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Joining us now is Professor Alan Dershowitz, and boy, there is so much going on, Professor. Let's start with the DOJ suing UCLA over a lot of their, I guess, complacent behavior towards anti-Semitism. Where is this going?
Well, I think it's more than complacent behavior. I think it's complicit behavior. I think what's happening is many universities, UCLA among them, is terrified of these anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-American protesters, and they just sit back and let it happen. They would never, ever allow some of these things to be said about African Americans or about gays or about women. But Jews are different, and Israel's different, and the rules are different. And what the Justice Department is telling everybody, UCLA, Harvard, and any school that is receiving federal funding, is what you would do to people who said the same thing about blacks, about Muslims, about gays, you must do to people who say the same things about Jews. You cannot have a double standard. That's the message. And it isn't being received by many universities because they are terrified of the woke hard left, and they're not so terrified of the Jews. And I think that the Justice Department is appropriately putting a little bit of the fear of God or the fear of Trump into their mind because they know they're going to lose funding if they don't shape up.
You know, Professor Dershowitz, are you stunned that after all the big hearings and everything else that happened, it still seems like these universities aren't getting the message? I'm glad that they're following up on them because this was from 2024, but it still seems like a lot of universities are allowing these protests. You look in New York, we got a mayor who says, oh, it's First Amendment. I mean, come on.
Well, it's First Amendment if it's applied equally to everybody, but if it's applied differentially in a double standard and only protests against Israel and Jews are allowed to make the kinds of statements that they made, calling for the death of Jews, calling for, whatever they're saying, they would never tolerate that about other groups, and it has to be a single standard. And you can't receive federal funding if you're violating the rules. And many of these universities, including the ones I went to and the ones I taught at, are not applying a single standard. And that's just wrong.
You know, Professor, there's also this food co-op. We were talking about this recently with you, this boycott of Israeli products in Park Slope, Brooklyn. How can they do that? How is that? That sounds like you are boycotting based on religion. That seems way over the top.
And there's very, very few products that are being sold there. One of them is matzah. Matzah. They won't allow you to buy matzah because some of the matzah is made by Jews in Israel. Now, they're perfectly happy to sell Chinese products. They're perfectly happy to sell Russian products, perfectly happy to sell Cuban products. If they had Sudanese products, they would be selling them as well where there's real genocide going on. But only Jewish products are being boycotted. First, I think there should be a lawsuit. That is, the people who run the board at this co-op, they don't have the authority. They have the authority to make decisions about food, about good prices on food. Who gave them the authority to make decisions about boycotts? That's not within their bylaws, and it's ultra-virus. And I'm sure there's some degree of governmental funding that goes somewhere into these co-ops, and they ought to be looked at from a legal point of view. And by the way, nobody should buy anything at this co-op. They should be put out of business because of their bigotry.
Professor John Katsimatidis, I just want to straighten it out in my own head. Are they banning Israeli products or are they banning Jewish products? If the matzahs were made in Brooklyn, would they allow it to be sold?
I think so. I think they're banning only Israel products, but I think they're banning all Israel products, not only products that are made in disputed territories, but, products that are made in Tel Aviv. And they're picking only one country, and they're only picking the nation state of the Jewish people. Yeah, now, if you're going to start boycotting food from countries, do it in the order of how terrible they are on human rights.
I'm going to boycott food from China. I'm going to boycott food for China for sure.
I think a lot of people will be cheering in that. Hey, before we let you go,
I love
Professor.
Chinese food. I love Chinese food.
I do too.
Food. What can I
like
tell
American Chinese food.
It does taste better.
Yes. I mean, the Chinese restaurants go out of business if the Jews stopped eating it on Sunday nights.
That's true. And on Christmas Day, remember Justice Kagan was asked in her confirmation hearings what she did for Christmas, and she said, well, my family always goes out for Chinese food. I don't ever want to ban Chinese food, but I don't want to ban Israeli food. Let people choose. You have people who go to a co-op. Let them pick. Let them have a sign. I don't even mind if you have a sign, or give out a leaflet saying, we don't think you should choose to buy Israeli food. Then let people decide. But banning the food completely while leaving the food of others is a violation of all kinds of rights.
So let me ask you before you go, Professor Dershowitz, this is wild. Former President Biden now scrambling because he is trying to block the release of those secret tapes that he had when he was doing the book. And Robert Hur, the, of course, independent counsel, looked at it, and he apparently was bumbly. President Trump was asked about it and said, hey, put it out there. Can President Biden block those tapes?
No. Ultimately, the tapes will come out. Look, if you want to get the tapes out...
What did he do? I'd like to know what he did. What did President Biden say on
Well,
those
he's
tapes?
trying to stop the actual videotape, which shows how he was while he was president. And I think the American public has the right to see that. Yeah. Look, if you want to get it out...
I agree with you. I agree. Everybody has the right to see it.
Just claim that Biden talked about Epstein. Then they'll say, turn it out, put it out, get it out there. If it's about Epstein, you put everything out. Remember, they put out every deposition on Epstein, every private email, every secret. But suddenly when the president of the United States is deposed in a formal legal proceeding, that somehow can't be disclosed to the public. That's absurd. So in the end, they will come out. I guarantee you we will see him humbling and bumbling, and probably everybody will be disappointed. He's not as bad as people say he is, and he's not as good as his supporters say he is. It'll be somewhere in between. But it'll be interesting to see the President of the United States, on videotape answering hard questions. That's the right of the American public.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look for that when that happens. Professor Dershowitz, we love you. Thank you for joining us as always.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.